Emily Teacher here, and today we're reading Graveyard of the Deep. Ever since that dreadful night in 1912 when the Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic, the great ship lay undisturbed. It had gone down in water too deep for the wreckage to be explored, or so people thought. A scientist named Robert Ballard believed otherwise. He had served aboard a miniature three-person submarine named Alvin while in the U.S. Navy. The Titanic lay in just over 12,000 feet of water. Alvin could descend to 13,000 feet, deep enough to reach the Titanic with plenty of leeway. Ballard's quest for the Titanic began in 1985 after the U.S. Navy agreed to make Alvin available to him. So, the Titanic, when it sunk, it went down so deep, there wasn't really a way to get to it. So, no one could take anything back up or even go to observe it. That is until Robert Ballard had an idea that he would be able to go down and see the wreckage there. He used to work for the U.S. Navy, and during his time there, he was in a three-person submarine named Alvin. So a small submarine that could only fit 3 people, but it could go down 13,000 feet, which was an extra 1,000 feet to where the Titanic was. So he began his quest to get use of Alvin, right, the submarine, and after 1985, the U.S. agreed that he would be able to use it. Ballard had only an approximate location of where the Titanic had gone down. He knew he would have to scour the area several miles across to have any hope of actually finding the wreckage. Before he could use Alvin, he needed to make a preliminary search using video cameras operated by remote control from the surface of a ship. These mobile cameras were mounted on a sled that was dragged along the bottom on a 13,000-foot cable. So before he could go down to see the Titanic, he needed to find where it was. So it wouldn't make sense to go all the way down in the submarine just to look for the Titanic. So what they did is used these video cameras attached to a sled. They used wires that went all the way down to 12,000 feet or 13,000 feet. And they dragged these cameras along the ocean floor to try and find the Titanic. Crew members aboard the surface ship studied the pictures from the deep on a television screen. For days, the pictures showed nothing but the mud at the bottom of the ocean, and the crew grew increasingly bored. Then suddenly, pictures of scattered debris on the ocean floor appeared. But was it from the Titanic or from some other ship? When a large ship's boiler came into view, the crew members were elated. They recognized it from photographs and they knew they had found the Titanic. So it took a really long time. They were looking within a large area to find the Titanic. They saw some wreckage, but it could have been from other ships that had sank. But finally, when they saw that iconic ship's boiler from the pictures, they knew that it was the Titanic, and they became elated. So probably there was a lot of clapping and cheering and excitement from those on board. Because the onset of winter made further operations dangerous, Ballard waited until the following year to resume his search. This time he took Alvin. From inside the tiny submarine, Ballard explored the wreck up close. The ship's hull had broken into 2 parts that landed right side up, almost half a mile apart. Both parts had settled in 60 feet of ooze and could never be pulled clear. No one would ever raise the Titanic. So he had to wait because winter was coming. It would have been too dangerous to go deep under the water at that time. So he waited a year, and then he finally was able to take the submarine Alvin down to look at the Titanic. He could see those clearly 2 broken apart sections of the ship, about half a mile apart from each other. But they were right side up, so it looked like, they would have if it was sitting on ground or floating above, just in 2 parts. But it's been a long time, so they were covered in ooze or things that had settled, right? Parts of the ocean, maybe rusted parts of the ship. Lots of things were covering the Titanic, so it was not able to be brought back up to the surface. It never would be able to be brought back up. Over a 2-week period, Alvin made a total of 11 descents. Ballard's most anxious moment came during his second dive when he landed on the main deck. The wooden planks that had once covered it had been eaten away. and there was a chance that the badly corroded metal plates would collapse as Alvin settled on them. Were they to do so, Alvin could become entangled between the decks. A return to the surface would be impossible, and there would be no way for the crew of the surface ship to attempt to rescue. Those aboard the tiny submarine held their breath, then let out sighs of relief the metal plates had held. Because the ocean water is salt water, so after a long time it starts to corrode, right? It would eat away wood and metal, and it wouldn't be strong like it used to be. So when the submarine had to land on this old metal deck, they were worried maybe it would go through the metal and the wood. But thankfully, the surface held up and they were able to get through that second descent no problem. Ballard took many photographs, including one pair of empty shoes lying side by side, a pathetic reminder of those who had died. He made no attempt to salvage anything from the wreck. In a book that he later wrote about his exploit, he expressed the hope that other expeditions would show similar restraint. Sad to say, the other explorers did not follow his example. Within a few years, gold coins and other valuable objects from the Titanic were being offered for sale to the public. The great ship itself, however, tombed to more than 1,500 people, will remain where it is. No one will ever raise the Titanic from its watery grave. So Ballard did not want to take anything from the Titanic. He believed it should be respected as the grave to all those people who had died. But sadly, other people were able to come after that and took things and sold them at auction. But we know that the Titanic itself will always stay where it is, as the grave to those who lost their lives. Thank you for reading with me today. We do have links related to each article, and if you would like the link related to this video here, you can find it down in the description below.